Hello and welcome to livealittlehigher.com. I really hope you had a beautiful Pesach, either if you were with family or you were alone with Hashem. It should have been intimate, meaningful, purposeful. I hope you came out of it stronger and better. Today we restart our classes in livealittlehigher.com. We start with parashas Tazria Metzora. These are two separate parashas that in some years are read separate and some years are read together, but nevertheless they're very much interconnected. One, Tazria, it starts talking about the conception of a baby, and it talks about saras, which is a disease that used to happen to the people in those days. It was a spiritual disease when people used to say lashon hara, used to speak negative about someone else. This condition would appear in their skin or in their homes or in their clothes, and the person had to be isolated, and like we're right now in quarantine, and they had to work out their flaw and do teshuvah, and eventually they would be purified again and they would be able to come back to society. The Metzora is the person that is afflicted with that saras. So today I want to base myself on a shiur given by Rabbi Benjamin Eisenberger, in which he talks about the devastating effects of lashon hara and that were suffered by the Metzora, and how this person had to dwell in isolation. The sages teach us that the punishment of a Metzora, of a person that was afflicted by the tzaras, was mida keneged mida, measure for measure, because a person that speaks negatively about another person in reality is creating divisiveness, it's creating separation, it's creating animosity between people. The words that you say about somebody, like for example, if someone comes to me and says, Margie, did you meet the new neighbor? And the person that is asking me has never met that neighbor before, has never talked to that person, and I say, oh yes, she's a little bit of a stuck up. Maybe I would say something like this, God forbid. Then the person that is asking me, even if she doesn't know this person, has never talked to this person, has never had any contact with this person, already in their head they have made themselves an idea of that person. And maybe it's not the right description of the person. Maybe the person is a beautiful person. Maybe the person, when I met her, was nervous. Maybe she portrayed something she's not. Maybe she's a person with a huge heart and a kind soul. So we have to be very careful how we speak about other people, how we speak about places. Even if you go to a restaurant and they ask you, how was the restaurant? Try to be positive. Try to look at something good about the place. Never be like, because sometimes maybe you went that day, it wasn't good, and maybe they were just starting, or they had the chef was not there and they had to hire someone else, and then you're creating bad for this place, because people assume, because of what you said, that the place is not a good place. So the Hassal, the sages teach us that the way in which people were punished for this lashon hara, for this evil talk, was mida keneged mida, measure for measure, because a person who divides people, who separates people through their speech, and they cause the other person to be alienated. The person, when someone is talking about a person, that person that's being talked about feels bad, feels alienated, feels left out. A lot of feelings of insecurity come to them, and I've seen horrors from lashon hara. I've seen complete families being destroyed because of lashon hara. So it is a very serious, grave sin. So such people should experience the same loneliness that they cause with their lashon hara. This is the whole purpose of them being quarantined, isolated, put in a separate place, so they could feel the loneliness of what their words cause to another person. So we can perceive also a deeper dimension to the punishment of the person that speaks evil about another person. And it says that the Rebbe of Rishiner has a beautiful explanation. And someone asked him once, why were the clouds that surrounded Klal Israel in the Midbar, when the Jewish people were wandering in the desert for 40 years, there were these clouds of glory that were there. They were in the Sehut, in the merit of Aaron HaKohen. These clouds came to protect the Jewish people from the elements of the Midbar, of the desert. So it says here, someone came and asked the Rishiner Rebbe why the clouds that protected the Jewish people in the desert were called Ananei HaKavod. Ananei means clouds of respect, which it doesn't make any sense. Clouds of respect. We know the word clouds of glory, but it says that they were also called Ananei HaKavod. So how can kavod or respect correlate to the purpose of the clouds? So of course there's a simple answer to this. It is that the Ananim, the clouds, gave respect to Klal Israel. By them being sheltered by these clouds, the Jewish people felt respected. And it was an honor for the Jewish people to be surrounded by these clouds of glory. But the Rishiner Rebbe answered, there's a deeper sense to this, and he said instead, he offered a fascinating answer, and he said that the clouds, that we should think of the clouds, that they're beautiful. When you look at the sky and you're looking at the clouds, you can be mesmerized by seeing them. I remember when I was a child and I used to lie down in the grass and look at the clouds, I used to look for their shapes, and I would say, I can see an elephant, I can see a dog, I can see a building, I can see a face. It was mesmerizing. They have the texture, the colors, the volumes. There's so much to them, but there's also science to clouds, and we know by scientific means that air can only hold just as much moisture before it becomes saturated. So when the humidity is at 100%, the water begins to condensate, and out of this condensation, the air becomes ice crystals, and depending on the height and the temperature, and the warm air, they can come and become the clouds. So warm air can hold more water vapor than cold air can. So the basic mechanism that squeezes visible water out of the air is the cooling of the air. And we see this in winter, like for example, when it's very cold and you blow, you're able to see your breath. It becomes like a vapor. And so the warm, moist air that we breathe when we are in a hot weather and we blow, we don't see this vapor. So the warm, moist air we breathe out is suddenly cooled, and it can hold its moisture. It cannot hold its moisture anymore. So the water condenses out of the air into vapor that we can see. The small amount of vapor from our breath quickly disperses into the mass of air around it, but when the amount of water vapor and the cooling are on a more massive scale, this is what produces the clouds. So with this in mind, the Rishiner Rebbe offered a fascinating Hiddush explanation, and he said that the clouds of respect, of kavod, the Ananei HaKavod, were actually formed from the breath of Klal Israel. So it was not something that came from heaven down. It was something that was created by the achdus, the unity that was at that moment part. It was so relevant within the Jewish people in those 40 years, and that unity, that the merit of that unity in which they were united as one person, was what created the clouds of respect. So when people are united, when they live in harmony, when they live with love one for the other, as one people, then the vapor they exhale also unites and blends together, and it becomes clouds. It forms clouds. So Aaron HaKohen he was specifically known for the midah of love your fellow. He had so much ahava for his fellow Jew and for shalom. He was the epitome of peace. He was the type of person that he would see two people fighting, and he would go to one of them and he would say, you know, your friend, he's so sad, he came to talk to me, he seems so distressed because he's not talking to you. He feels so bad, he misses you. And then he would go to the friend and he would tell him exactly the same thing. The minute these two people would see each other, that instead of fighting, they would embrace each other and start crying. So this was the attribute of Aaron HaKohen, was peace, was love one for the other. And he created much harmony between the Jewish people. And in Aaron HaKohen's lifetime, his personality was such a great personality that he was not a preacher. He didn't need to talk to the people and tell them how they had to behave. Just by the way of his being, how he acted towards other people with so much love and so much respect, people became so inspired by him that at that time people wanted to emulate Aaron HaKohen. They wanted to be like him. And people kept that unity because they were trying to emulate Aaron HaKohen. So says the Rishiner Rebbe, the unparalleled unity, respect, and love that the 600 Jews that share one another the zehut of Aaron HaKohen, because they behaved in the same manner as Aaron HaKohen behaved. They tried to emulate him. They tried to be like him. They themselves were the ones that created these clouds of kavod, of respect. Through their unity, that vapor, that breath blended together and created, as we know, the Ananei HaKavod. So there is no greater honor for Klal Israel than the fact that the 600,000 Jews demonstrated such a high level of Ahavas Israel. So we might also add to this great Rebbe, to this great saint, the Rishiner Rebbe, there is a Pashat, a devar that he says that not only did the Anamim give kavod to the Jewish people, but also the Jewish people gave kavod to the Ananim, the clouds. So you know, in Pirkei Avot it says, who is honorable? Honorable is a person that honors others. When a person is trying to seek honor for himself, honor is gonna run away from him. But if he's not trying to look for honor for himself and he's always looking for who he can honor, then honor is gonna be running after him. So we see here that these clouds of respect were created from the respect that the Jewish people gave one another, and the Yidden had for one another. So following in the zehut of Aaron HaKohen, it was because of his merit that the Jewish people were acting in this way. It was because of him. And you see from here how important it is that a person really has highly refined character traits. Because when a person is working on himself and he's refining himself, and we're right now in the counting of the Omer, when we're refining our attributes and we're trying to emulate Hashem, this is what we're trying to do right now till Shavuot, is try to be a mirror of God in this world by emulating Him through His 7 emotional attributes. When a person is able to refine himself and live in this high way, then people around him are also gonna be wanting to be this way. You know, there's viruses like the COVID, the one that we're living right now, the invisible enemy, as they're calling him, which create a lot of havoc in the world, and we don't even see it. But if we would see that even if the negativity has such an effect in the people, imagine how much more positive effect would have if everybody behaved in a holy way. If people lived in a godly, holy way, it would be the same. But it wouldn't be an invisible thing. It would be something that you could see. That it would cause like a ripple effect. If I am this way and the persons around me, they get they contract this virus of kindness and love towards others and respect, and they want to behave this way too, and then the people they touch are going to want to behave this way too, and it's a rolling ball that it's like a snowball that grows and grows and grows. And that's what happened to the Jewish people in these 40 years in the desert, that they lived in such a way, such unity, that these clouds of glory went with them for 40 years, protecting them from all the elements. So we see here that also the punishment for Lashon Hara is to be forced to leave the place where you live. The place of where there's achdus, where there's love and camaraderie, where people are good to each other, then the person that is saying things that are negative, that are not good for someone else, for people who listen to him and for the person he's talking about, then he's taken out of this place, because there's no place for him there. There's no place. It just takes him out. So the Ananim, the clouds created by harmony and unity, expelled the person that did Lashon Hara. So we know that the positive is always much stronger than the negative. As Hasidut teaches, how do you dispel darkness? With a little bit of light, you take away all the darkness. Like if you're going to a very dark room and you light a match, then you can see there's light, the darkness is gone. So the positivity of a person, the goodness of a person has much, much more weight than the bad in the world. And we're seeing it right now. We see right now with what's going on, the heroic, courageous people that are coming out from all walks of life that are doing such incredible things for other people. And the negativity has become so little. We almost don't even hear about it anymore. We're only listening about the doctors and the first responders and the nurses and children who are sewing masks, and companies that are doing masks, and people that are helping elderly people, and all this goodness that is coming out from this horrific situation that we're going through. But we see that there's much more light than darkness. So we see here that the person, the Metzora, he suffers by sitting alone and being alienated as a consequence of speaking Lashon Hara. But the reward, imagine the reward of a person who abstains himself from saying Lashon Hara. When someone has this juicy piece of news that he wants to give to the world, he just heard this juicy piece of Lashon Hara that he wants to share with everybody about somebody, so juicy, and suddenly he abstains himself, he bites his tongue, and he says, no, I'm not going to say it. Imagine the reward that this person will receive because of this act, of this glorious and heroic act. So the corresponding unimaginable reward, when we strive for shalom and achdus, for shalom, for peace and unity, is that we have the merit to create a sheltering, shielding bubble around ourselves and other people around us. This is such a big blessing that you create around yourself. It's such a protection. It's such a protection, because a person that doesn't speak bad about other people is completely protected, similar to the protection offered by the clouds of glory. So living with one another is a great theme that always needs reinforcement. Right now we have been locked down in our homes. We're all separate but united by heart. And you see, even if we're distant in distance, we're very much close in our hearts. There's so many other ways to connect. And we see that people are not focused right now in speaking about other people. People are focused right now in seeing how they can help someone else. So it is beyond our capacity to understand and criticize the Talmidim that died in this time so many years, thousands of years ago, the Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva, who died 24,000, there were 24,000 students of Rabbi Akiva that died in this time, 2,000 years ago, because they said Lashon Hara. They were, and it was not a Lashon Hara as we know it, because they were very refined people. But you know, Hashem, He goes with each person according to their level. And what happened to them was that they didn't have the capacity to sit and listen to another person. They thought that each one of them knew more than the other. And they didn't have that humbleness, that part of themselves that they could sit and listen to another person in his perspective. And we're not anybody to criticize them, because we don't even come to their foot in their level of saintliness. But nevertheless, the message of this time of the year, of the counting of the Omer, is a reminder of how careful we have to be when we're treating other people, when we're listening to other people, and how we should tolerate other people, and to achieve the condition in which we can be protected by these clouds of glory. So unfortunately, a large percentage of people suffer from insecurity and low self-esteem. This is the root of intolerance. This is why people do Lashon Hara. So we can stop saying negative things about other people, or even stop talking about other people in general. We have to understand where this problem comes from. Where's the root of this problem? And the root of the problem of Lashon Hara comes from self-esteem, from lack of self-esteem, my friends. When we have the need to be talking about other people, it's because in reality there's things about ourselves that we are not comfortable with. And when we speak about someone else and we show their flaws to others, in a certain way, it makes us feel better that we are not so bad. And sometimes it reaches such an unhealthy level that we become unable to accept that others, near or far, don't live with identical choices as we do. And we become completely intolerant. And we see it today. Before this COVID-19 hit us, we saw the strife and the divisiveness of people because of their ideas. People cannot tolerate themselves, each other, because I think this way and you think that way. And you know what? That's irrelevant. We need to have a healthy mind, and we need to, God willing, be connected to Hashem and go with His ways. But nevertheless, when people have their ideas, we should never be mean to them, mistreat people. We should never do that. On the contrary, we should always try to bring people to the truth with love, with caring, showing them the way, not with hatred. This doesn't bring any good. And this doesn't bring any good. So it takes a lot of insight to understand that our intolerance stems from a lack of self-confidence. And so without knowing the source of our intolerance, we feel deep urge to dismiss anyone different from us, and then to speak Lashon Hara about them, creating a lot of machlokets, a lot of divisiveness and hatred and fighting. This urge is only intensified by our awareness of our shortcomings and flaws, and our fear of being forced to acknowledge them. So the first thing, my friends, we're working on ourselves right now. This is the Sefirat HaOmer. We have a few weeks left before Shavuot, in which we have this vitamin implanted in us, this energy that helps us refine ourselves. What we should be working on ourselves right now is really bringing out the best of ourselves. Work on yourself. Don't be so worried about the other person's flaws. Look at your flaws. Look at them in front of you. Acknowledge them. Sit with them. See why you have them. Think how you could fix them. Work on them. And I'm not saying like you have to be a project, a complete project. Like take one or two things of your personality that is not in the right way, that is not of your midot, that are not working in a good way, and work on them for the year. If you're judgmental, try to not be judgmental. If you're a little bit haughty, try to become more humble. Take 2 or 3 things and try to work on them, and don't look so much at other people's flaws. Look on your flaws. Work your flaws. The moment that you start working your flaws and you treat people in different ways, you're going to see people with different eyes. So what Rabbi Eisenberger is saying here is that the condition is exacerbated when we base the way we feel about ourselves and our choices on that we think others are feeling about us. and we project. It says that we're seen in three ways. One way is the way we see ourselves. Another way is how people look at us, like you think someone is looking at yourself. And the other one is how Hashem looks at you. And there are three different perspectives of the same person. So we have to acknowledge our flaws, we have to work on them, but at the same time we have to acknowledge our goodness, because if not, we can fall into a depression, and that's not good, because it's not going to help you do what you need to do. Look at what you have good, work on that too, make it shine. So, and the very worst comes when our self-image is not even shaped by our own choices, but rather by the choices we think we impress in others. So many people live their lives thinking of, is this person's gonna be happy about this? Is this living their lives according to other person's expectations? And this is terrible. You have to live your life according to Hashem's expectations, not other people's expectations. So tolerance in spiritual matters, however, presents a greater challenge. It's harder to tolerate people that are not living a moral, righteous life. And it's okay. We don't need to be friends with them. We don't need to be close to them. But at the same time, we don't need to be mean and disrespectful. So real unity actually exists when we express tolerance for differences, when we can appreciate the other person, when we learn to accept that everybody is different and everybody is entitled to be different, and when we don't expect that person to be what you want them to be, but you love them for who they really are. And we can learn to accept that we don't think the same way. It's fine, it's okay, live and let live. Not everybody has to think like you. Everybody has their own minds and their own feelings and their own way of how they were brought up and their own way of thinking. So it's okay to let people be who they are. So then we can find the immense common ground we share, and you'll see that there's more things that unite us than things that divide us. And he finishes off saying, and we find that unity within ourselves will be sohe, we will be meritorious to create that unique sheltering environment that was the Ananek HaKavod. And God willing, we should try to emulate our forefather Aaron HaKohen in his kindness, in his love for other people, in trying to bring peace to the world, peace between husband and wife, peace between friends. This is the most important part for Hashem. For Hashem, the most important thing ever is that humanity works together in love and harmony. So I wish you a blessed week, and remember, live a little higher. Thank you.